Welcome back to Simply Holistic. Dr. Tony here. We're going to revisit cortisol. Going to dive a little deeper, attempting to finish up the latest science study that we've been discussing. Okay, so I believe what I ended with last time was cortisol levels are continuously monitored in the body to maintain homeostasis. Unregulated levels can be detrimental, which is true. Obviously, cortisol levels, unregulated, they're going to mess everything up with your body. You should naturally have the cortisol spike in the morning. You should naturally have the cortisol valley at night. Melatonin would be working the opposite of that. There are a couple of outcomes to this. If your cortisol is sent off track chronically, here's the difference again between the acute and the chronic. Acute is the immediate, right away. It's the right now thing. You have an acute injury, it's just happened. You have an acute illness, it just happened. You have a chronic illness, it's been hanging around and doesn't want to go away. Difference between acute and chronic. So acutely, your cortisol levels are meant to swing every day. Start the day here, go down. Start the night here, go up. Your cortisol levels are meant to swing. And then, technically, biologically, they're not flatlined because they're going to go up and down. They ride a wave, they ride your circadian rhythm, or should be riding the circadian rhythm. Within that wave that it should naturally be riding, then you have the fight or flight moments. Shouldn't be chronic. You have the fight or flight moments where, the cortisol is doing this, and then boom, because you have that fight or flight moment. It comes back down and resumes its circadian rhythm. Or at night, oop, shoom, and it comes back in, resumes that circadian rhythm. So that's how it should be going. But clinically, if your cortisol levels are chronically out of whack, it's then going to lead to a couple other conditions. And that's really what I want to touch on here. We can go to two different extremes with this. Hypercortisolism or hypocortisolism. Vast differences. Yes, we can test for both. Yes, we can treat both. Vast differences there. All right, so hypercortisolism. The excerpt here, to wrap up this study, Cushing syndrome, Cushing, as in a seat cushion, Cushing syndrome, occurs when the human body is exposed to high cortisol levels for an extended period of time. That's chronic. High cortisol levels chronically, chronic high. The different etiologies for Cushing syndrome can be categorized as ACTH dependent or ACTH independent. ACTH is a pituitary hormone that we do test through this office to see where yours is to check for tumors, pituitary tumors. In the ACH dependent subtypes, there is an excess of ACTH due to either a pituitary tumor or an ectopic source such as neuroendocrine tumor. So either way, you're looking at a tumor. Hyper, chronic high cortisol, chronic high cortisol. This is the fight or flight hormone. This is normally the fight or flight hormone, but if you're living in chronic fear, I don't want to say likely. If you're living in chronic fear, then logically you're very likely, but the reality is you very possibly have high cortisol levels going up chronically high. So, with that said, we should test your ACTH hormone to see where that is at. Okay, so the ACTH dependent subtypes, again, an excess of ACTH. In the dependent subtypes, there is an excess of ACTH. If there is that would be due to either a pituitary tumor, which we can treat, or an ectoptic source such as neuroendocrine tumor. Well, again, there we can treat the two different sources of the tumor. Sort of. I say two different sources, but even the pituitary is tied to the endocrine system. Now, okay, endocrine. You don't see the wall over there. Endocrine is your lymphatic, so it's part of. It's glandular, it's part of the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is actually your trash system. Yes, it's the hormonal system because it's glandular, but it's also the trash system. It's where everything gets put into, dumped from your cells to put into lymph nodes, which is the endocrine system, into the not the lymph nodes, the lymph vessels. The lymph vessels, which go through the lymph nodes. So, the neuroendocrine is to do with your lymph system, which we do lymph drainage in here to help everything move along. So, this level, the excess ACTH, due to either pituitary tumor or neuroendocrine. And the neuro, by the way, this is how it's different, because it is lymphatic, it's endocrine, glandular, hormonal. But where it's different is the neuro is the central nervous system. It's tied to your nerve fibers as well, not just your glandular system, but your nerve fibers also, neuroendocrine. In both cases, the overproduction of ACTH stimulates the adrenal gland on your kidneys, the adrenal, to produce excess cortisol. So with either of those tumors, pituitary or neuroendocrine, with either of them, the overproduction of ACTH stimulates the adrenal gland to produce excess cortisol, so you're chronically high. In the ACTH independent subtypes, that was dependent, this is independent, there is an endogenous or outside etiology and an exogenous etiology. Excuse me, the exogenous outside, okay. Exogenous outside, we're just dealing with internal and external sources, okay? The endogenous cause is usually due to a tumor on the adrenal gland, which leads to excess cortisol production. The endogenous cause due to a tumor on the adrenal gland, which leads to excess cortisol production. The exogenous cause is due to excessive oral or injectable corticosteroid use. It's the exogenous outside. The exogenous cause is due to excessive oral or injectable corticosteroid use. Now, what would that be? Either you're getting a pharmaceutical injection of cortisol, or maybe you're taking an illegal steroid. Okay. Where was that at? Injectable. Okay. Oral corticosteroids such as prednisone. I've heard a lot more about that lately. People unhappy with it. Okay. Such as prednisone, increase the amount of cortisol in the body. Gives you a cortisol spike. Now, there are herbs that will actually give you a cortisol spike. And at times with your state of health, this actually becomes very helpful. There are herbs that will do this, that will handle this, instead of using the pharmaceutical. Okay. Oral corticosteroids, such as prednisone, increase the amount of cortisol in the body, therefore high levels. They are prescribed to help alleviate symptoms associated with chronic inflammatory diseases. Not the right approach. Okay. Help alleviate symptoms associated with... Okay, I'm not saying they don't... Symptom-wise, I'm not saying that those shots don't help. That's not actually what I'm saying. Symptom-wise. But it's not the right approach because although it may be covering the symptom, it's not addressing the problem. Okay, they are prescribed to help alleviate symptoms associated with chronic inflammatory diseases such as systematic erythematous lupus, SLE, and rheumatoid arthritis. There are definitely better methods, options of treating these two. The symptoms of Cushing's syndrome are dependent on how elevated the cortisol levels are, which makes sense. Common signs and symptoms of excess cortisol include weight gain, especially in the face and abdomen, spare tire, fatty deposits between the shoulder blades, diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, hirsutism in women, extra hair growth, proximal muscle weakness, and osteoporosis. Okay, this let me clarify that. Common signs and symptoms of excess cortisol. That does not mean just from taking pharmaceutical cortisol or illegal drugs, illegal illegal steroids, shots, whatever, pills. This is not just from the pharmaceutical or the illegal. This is not just from that. Common signs and symptoms of excess cortisol, excess cortisol. So this is a blanket statement in general, excess cortisol. If you are living with high cortisol levels, you're not taking pharmaceuticals to cause the high cortisol. You're not taking illegal steroids to cause the high cortisol, but you still have high cortisol chronically. Maybe you live in fear. Maybe that's the trigger. Maybe. Common signs and symptoms of excess cortisol include weight gain, face and abdomen. This is why I wanted to clarify this, because this is just high cortisol in general. You're living that way. Weight gain, fatty deposits between the shoulder blades, diabetes, high blood pressure, excess hair growth. By the way, that's not just here, ladies. That's not just on your head that you have a lot of hair here. That means excess hair growth other places on your body. I see a lot of hair, for example, on legs. I see dark hair growing crazy on legs. Okay. Proximal muscle weakness and osteoporosis. So your bones are getting weak. By extension, the muscles are going to get weak. The treatment for it is dependent on the cause. Okay. Yeah, the most common treatment is through surgical intervention. Nah. Now, all of that is hypercortisolism. All of that is chronic, like not just the spike, not just the spike of high cortisol, chronically high cortisol. Now, let's flip this. Hypocortisolism. Primary adrenal insufficiency. Primary adrenal insufficiency. Now, the top one was associated with the adrenal gland, also a tumor, an adrenal tumor. This primary adrenal insufficiency, the adrenal gland, the same gland on top of your kidney, but is not producing enough. Also known as Addison disease, is most commonly caused by autoimmune adrenalitis. Other causes, and yes, autoimmune is the body attacking itself. So then we got to figure out what other process in the body is triggering the body to attack itself in this manner. Okay. Other causes include malignancy, infection, adrenal hemorrhage. So hemorrhage is when you got a blood vessel that just, it's flowing through the blood, and then just the blood vessel itself just blood goes everywhere. It burst, blood's everywhere. It shouldn't be that way. It should be contained in the vein. That's a hemorrhage. So adrenal hemorrhage. You have blood vessels flowing through there. Obviously, you don't want them to burst. Okay, so hypo, low cortisol, chronically, actually not just a temporary dip, but chronically low. Because again, your cortisol is going to fluctuate anyway. So it's not just, oh, I got a dip here, I'm in hypo. No, chronically low. Other causes include malignancy, infection, or adrenal hemorrhage. Autoimmune adrenalitis results from the body attacking its adrenal cortex. There's the autoimmune. The body is attacking the adrenal, actually one section of the adrenal. One section, because it's got different parts of it, so your body's attacking one section of the adrenal. Then I need to figure out why. Secondary adrenal insufficiency is due to insufficient production of ACTH. So the chronically high cortisol is from chronically high ACTH. This is from insufficient production of ACTH from the anterior pituitary gland. So the adrenal, what is tied to the pituitary. Insufficient production of ACTH from the anterior pituitary gland. The HPA axis, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal. So the pituitary and adrenal are working together here on your chronically low cortisol production. This can be caused by pituitary disease. This can be caused by pituitary disease. But the most common cause is due to suppression of the HPA axis from chronic glucocorticoid use. Chronic external glucocorticoid use. So again, pharmaceutical injections or pills or illegal steroids can lead to chronically low cortisol. Okay, so this can be caused by pituitary disease, which we would check. The most common cause is due to suppression of this axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis, from chronic external steroidal use. It says glucocorticoid. The bottom line is it's steroidal use. You know, a lot of times pharmaceutical docs will use steroids to treat some acute health condition you got going on. Got to watch it because that could be lowering the cortisol. Okay. Another type of adrenal insufficiency is due to a lack of CRH release from the hypothalamus. Symptoms of adrenal insufficiency include fatigue, weight loss. Now, here's a difference notable to me. Hypothyroid, you're going to gain weight. Hypocortisolism, fatigue, weight loss. Hypotension, low blood pressure. See that at times. Low blood pressure. And hyperpigmentation of the skin. Hyperpigmentation of the skin. Over excessive pigmentation of the skin. Your skin is not the I want to say golden. It would be more golden. Your skin is not the more pale color. It's more golden. It becomes even more golden, more brown, more dark. It is important to remember I skipped. Okay. Since aldosterone will also be deficient, laboratory results will show hyperkalemia. Glucocorticoid replacement therapy, pharmaceutically, such as hydrocortisone, is required to treat symptoms of hypocortisolism. Important to increase the dosage for acute stressors such as illness and surgery to avoid adrenal crisis. Two extreme opposites here. Symptoms for each one. The ones honestly that strike me, hypotension, which is low blood pressure. low blood pressure, you could have low cortisol, chronically low cortisol, and hyperpigmentation. The skin pigmentation is actually changing. Okay, so, you might wonder, well, how could my skin pigmentation change from that? Well, think about this. Each summer, people go out in the sun to get a sun tan. One exposure, the skin darkens a bit, it goldens. Another exposure, a little bit more. Another exposure, a little bit more. The skin responds to our time in the sun by changing the pigmentation. Okay, so hypocortisolism. Take the sun out of the equation. The sun in the sky, the star that we live under. Take that out of the equation. The spring and summer activities outside to get yourself a tan. Take that out of the equation. Remove that, and yet you're still gaining pigmentation in your skin. Gaining. Without the sun exposure, you're still gaining pigmentation in the skin. See, to me, that's a kind of a niche, however you want to say that, symptom. That's not a broad general symptom that you're going to see from just any health condition. Unlike, fatigue, you're going to see from pretty much anything. Weight gain, you're going to see from pretty much anything. And I know this one's weight loss, but it just has to say weight gain, you're going to see from most anything. Low blood pressure and hyper skin pigmentation. Those two things for this are going to be big signs. Because, honestly, most people today do not live with low blood pressure. A lot of you do. A lot. Or some of you. Actually, I shouldn't even really say a lot. Some of you do. But most people don't live with low blood pressure. Usually, and I know this from my own office here, the numbers are not usually low, not usually chronically low. If they are chronically low, I'm watching. I want to make sure the person's healthy and going to be able to keep living their daily life. Pharmaceutically, it sends up flags too because it's chronic low blood pressure, and they're, hey, what's going on with you? Well, I'm wondering the same thing. What's going on? What's causing this chronic low? But most of you don't live with chronic low blood pressure. So if that is a sign, if that is a reading that we get regularly here in the office, because we do the vitals with every visit, if that is a sign that we get regularly here in the office, if you have chronic low blood pressure, it could be tied to chronic low cortisol, not just low, chronic low cortisol. Think of it this way. If your cortisol is chronically high because you're living in fear, in fight or flight constantly, your blood pressure is going to be up because your blood pressure is going to naturally spike or stay up as a response to the stress level that you feel. If you're perceiving that stress level, your blood pressure is going to go in response. We would expect to see that the cortisol and the blood pressure are going to go hand in hand in that regard. So low cortisol, or low blood pressure, if we keep seeing the low blood pressure, it could very well be a sign that your cortisol is just going with that. If your skin pigmentation, this right here, all this, your skin pigmentation, if it's changing color, not from sun exposure, not from tanning equipment, but if it's changing color, removing all those influences away, but yet you're still changing color, you're getting your body is in hyper mode, and it's adding the skin pigmentation. It could be a result of your cortisol level, your daily chronic cortisol level. I had to clarify because it's not just daily, because daily it fluctuates again, but chronic low cortisol level. Another symptom that, I don't even know why this wasn't written on there. Another symptom would be, why wasn't this written in there? Anyway, so another symptom would actually be of chronically low cortisol. Another symptom is in the mornings, because think about it. It should be spiking. When you're sleeping, it needs to be climbing. So then it is actually spiked in the morning when you're waking up, and then it starts falling back down. Remember, we discussed that a video or two ago. So it should be spiking in the morning to wake you up. If it's chronically low during the night, it's not doing this. Not at all. So you're not waking up with a spike and coming down. Through the night, it's staying pretty much flatline, and you're waking up or trying to wake up going, you're struggling. You're struggling to wake up. Really don't know why that wasn't a symptom on the hypocortisolism. Okay, it should have been. Really should have been, because this would have been an obvious symptom. To go with the low blood pressure, chronic low blood pressure, and the skin pigmentation, if in the morning you're struggling to wake up, setting alarms not working, and here, let me clarify that further. Sometimes we as humans make the decision. We hear the alarm, we shut the alarm off, and then we make the choice to go, not now. That is not tied to your cortisol. That is tied to your choice. However, okay, I know somebody's probably saying, well, it actually is tied to, it's not a choice, I don't have the energy to get up. Okay, so let me clarify that too. If that's how you feel, you do have the choice to go ahead and get up by the alarm, but if you still feel like you're just so drained you just can't move. So let me clarify that too. If you just feel like you're just so drained you can't move, that's the other symptom. If in the mornings you do not have that cortisol spike to actually help you wake up, help you go, okay, boom, I got to get up. Granted, you still may have to convince yourself, but I got to get up and get moving. If you do not have that cortisol spike in the morning, you're probably in hypocortisolism. Do you have low blood pressure to go with it? That's another thing. But if you have high blood pressure to go with it, then see, there's something else going on there. Anyway, on these symptoms, low blood pressure, skin pigmentation changing, trouble waking up in the morning. There's 3 symptoms right there that could very well indicate chronically low cortisol. All right. With that said, find us at justsimplyholistic.com. Download our intake papers, get them back to us, let us review them. Make yourself an appointment here with our office. Get yourself into our Simply Holistic office. Let us sit down face-to-face, review your intake papers, go through the exams, our gamut of exams and tests. Let us see where you are, and if you do have hyper or hypocortisolism, we can treat that. So let us start working on that with you and help you to level this back out. Let us help you find that homeostasis, that baseline. Help you get back to a healthy state or get to it. You might be thinking get to a healthy state. You've been there at one point, though. Let's help you get back. All right. We look forward to seeing and serving you soon.